John's story starts like many others. He grew up in a loving, supportive family with plenty of opportunities. His childhood was filled with happy memories, and he enjoyed sports and hanging out with friends. But as he entered his teenage years, things began to change. It was during these years that John had his first encounter with drugs.
At a party with friends, someone offered me marijuana. Curious and eager to fit in, I tried it. Initially, it was just casual, recreational use, something to do on weekends. But soon, I found myself seeking out more potent substances to escape the stress and emotional pain I was experiencing.
What started as experimentation turned into a dangerous habit. By the time he was in his early 20s, John had moved from marijuana to prescription opioids, which he initially used for a sports injury. As his dependency grew, his need for stronger substances led him to heroin. The drug became a constant companion, one that would rule his life for years to come. Addiction took over John's life in every way. He lost his job, strained relationships with his family, and drifted away from his closest friends. The once bright, ambitious young man became someone his loved ones barely recognized. He felt trapped in a cycle of using drugs to numb his emotional pain, but every high left him feeling emptier and more isolated.
For me, addiction was not just about the drugs. It was about escaping. I had unresolved trauma from my past, insecurities I couldn't shake, and stress that seemed unbearable. Drugs became my way of coping, and I started using them not for fun, but for survival.
His addiction pushed him into dangerous situations. John had multiple run-ins with the law, overdosed twice, and became estranged from his family. He was living on the streets, homeless, and completely consumed by his addiction. It was a life of constant desperation, an endless search for his next fix. For many struggling with addiction, there comes a moment of clarity, a rock-bottom experience that pushes them toward change. For John, that moment came on a cold winter night, sleeping in a car because he had nowhere else to go. He was physically and emotionally broken, feeling as though life was slipping away.
I remember looking at myself in the mirror and barely recognizing the person I had become. My skin was pale, my body was emaciated, and my eyes were hollow. More than anything, I felt an overwhelming sense of shame. It was at that moment that I realized that if I didn't get help, I wouldn't live much longer, but I didn't want to die.
Somewhere deep inside, there was still a flicker of hope. With trembling hands, he made a phone call to his sister, someone he had barely spoken to in years. Through tears, he admitted that he needed help, that he couldn't do this alone anymore. Reaching out for help was the first step in John's recovery journey, but it wasn't an easy one.
My family had been hurt deeply by my addiction, and there was a lot of mistrust.
Still, we knew this was a life-or-death situation, and we came together to support him.
John checked into a drug rehabilitation center, where he began the painful process of detoxing from heroin.
Detox was grueling. My body went through intense withdrawal symptoms, including nausea, muscle pain, fever, and uncontrollable cravings.
But the most difficult part was facing the emotional and psychological trauma that had fueled his addiction for so many years.
In rehab, John participated in individual therapy sessions and group counseling.
For the first time, I was able to talk openly about the issues that had been haunting me, my insecurities, childhood trauma, and the guilt I felt for hurting those I loved.
He realized that addiction wasn't just about the drugs. It was about the pain he had been avoiding. The recovery process, a lifelong commitment. Recovery didn't happen overnight for John. It was a long, difficult journey filled with setbacks and challenges.
But I learned valuable tools in rehab that helped me navigate life without drugs. After leaving the rehab center, I knew I had to make significant changes in my life if I wanted to stay clean.
He joined a 12-step program, where he found a supportive community of others who understood his struggles.
I attended regular meetings, got a sponsor, and began to rebuild my life, one day at a time.
One of the biggest challenges John faced in recovery was repairing the relationships he had damaged during his addiction. His family had suffered immensely, and trust was something that had to be rebuilt slowly.
It wasn't easy, but with time, patience, and accountability, I began to mend those relationships.
Another crucial aspect of John's recovery was finding healthy ways to cope with stress and emotional pain.
I took up exercise, practiced mindfulness, and engaged in hobbies that brought me joy. Instead of turning to drugs to numb my feelings, I learned to confront my emotions head-on.
John's journey shows that recovery is not just about quitting drugs. It's about rebuilding a life that's worth living.
Life in recovery, finding purpose and fulfillment. Today, John has been sober for over 5 years. His life looks entirely different from the dark days of addiction.
I've reconnected with my family, found stable employment, and I'm even pursuing a passion for helping others who are struggling with addiction.
One of the most important lessons John has learned in recovery is that sobriety is a lifelong commitment. There are still moments when cravings or old emotional triggers resurface, but he now has the tools and support system to face them.
I take my recovery one day at a time, knowing that every day I stay sober is a victory.
John's story is proof that no matter how far someone has fallen, recovery is possible. It takes courage, dedication, and the willingness to reach out for help. But it's never too late to turn your life around.
A message to those struggling with addiction. If you're watching this and struggling with addiction, know that you are not alone. No matter how hopeless things may feel right now, there is always a way out. The first step is asking for help, whether it's reaching out to a family member, a friend, or a professional. Recovery is hard work, but it's also incredibly rewarding. There is life beyond addiction, and it's full of hope, joy, and purpose. You are worth fighting for, and there are people who care about you, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. If you or someone you know needs support, you can call 1-888-82-400646. This helpline is available to provide guidance, support, and resources for anyone struggling with addiction. You don't have to go through this alone. Help is just a phone call away. Conclusion: a journey of healing. John's story is just one example of the many people who have battled addiction and come out the other side stronger. Recovery isn't a straight path, but it's a journey worth taking. If this story has inspired you, please share it with others who might need encouragement. And remember, there is always hope. For more support and resources, don't hesitate to reach out to 1-888-82-400646. You deserve to live a life free from the chains of addiction. Thank you for watching, and stay strong on your journey to recovery.